What's up, Vault Heads? So I'm finally getting back to having a look at some more of the deep dive content that we saw at the recent PlayStation State of Play event. I'm going to level with you. I keep making this video. I've made this video I've tried to record it 3 times, and I've now been here for about 20 minutes trying to record it this time. And unfortunately, every single time I go off into massive rants because there's so many alarm bells going off with what we're seeing so far with Borderlands 4. And there's a lot of content here to get through anyway. But I've sat back on it for a while, and I'm going to try and get through this as quick as I can. So in this video, I'm going to actually break this down, so I'm not going to do everything at once. So this video is just going to be having a look at the more trailery gameplay components that we saw during the deep dive event, not including the trailer that was released. There's a video on the channel for that, so you can check that out. But just the actual deep dive presentation, they showed a number of short clips, so we're going to have a look just at those in this video. The actual gameplay itself will be in a different video, and then some comments on packs and other things will be coming. But I'm going to just go scene for scene, going to slow this down and just talk about what's here. I'm going to try and completely stay on what we see. Just comment what's there, my thoughts, and then we can just, you know, hang out and I'd love to hear what you think about this stuff so far as well. So in this first shot here, we get to have a look at Raph jumping out of his Digi-Runner. Little double jump there as he switches into Ordnance mode, and then using the new glide ability. Just a real quick moan about those. So I think I'm not happy about either of those personally, and this is part of the issues that I'm seeing with a lot of the footage on Borderlands 4, is that things seem to be very much catering to casual players. There's a lot of stuff that seems to be rounded out and dumbed down. And Destiny players, which I guess, you know, I understand you're trying to siphon across a lot of customers, but there's so many things that just feel like they don't fit in Borderlands. And then Squirrel with a gun is probably the other, and that's more just a joke about the gliding. But yeah, the Ordnance thing. So my understanding is that Ordnance, your heavy weapon slot now, is a rechargeable ability, which to me is completely bogus. Like, that's a really, really terrible thing to put into Borderlands. One of the best things about Borderlands has always been the freedom to select whatever guns you want. Just run around with 4 pistols. It's never been the case that in Borderlands you're necessarily relying on the heavy weapon, because you might be using a redundant fibber, or you might be using I don't know, a Hornet, or, you know, an Infinity pistol. You might not be using the big gun, and that's kind of the fun of Borderlands. Any gun class could be the big gun, could be the one you're using for a boss or something like that. You know, they make a sort of point on this about saving the big guns for the boss. It's like, no one was ever in a Borderlands game saving a machine gun or the rocket launcher necessarily for the boss. Like, it shows a complete misunderstanding of their own product, which is really, really concerning. I'm already going off a path again. Let's move on. So gliding, also don't like that. Terrible form of movement in gameplay. Everything we've seen of that so far looks very boring. Last 10 years, gliding in Destiny has been totally boring. To have that now on every character is going to be very boring. I really hope that you can augment that with your characters. I'd like to see more double or triple jumps or dashes, combinations of those. Movement combinations with dashes and jumps or blinks, stuff like that is way more interesting, way more fun, way more frenetic. And, you know, stuff like Shadow Warrior 2, Ghost Runner, like the way that those implement more variety of moving is definitely more what I'd have liked to see in Borderlands rather than a boring glide. Right, I'm going to move on. Just going to grip my teeth, and we're just going to try and get through this. Ranting will try to be in other videos. I just want to comment on what we see. Right, already don't like what we're seeing on the gun here. The fabric inclusion as a look to this gun is something new to Borderlands in my memory, and the actual way they've designed the scope on this one. These look very much like stealing the homework of Destiny stuff. Again, the Fallen influence, which we've seen very, very clearly on a lot of the Ripper architecture in the game, and all these other kind of Destiny influences. I feel like this is just to appease Destiny players, just to make things feel familiar for them. If you're going to bring this in as a new texture, that's great. We want more variety, but it hasn't been done in a creative and unique and interesting way. It just looks copied and pasted. So it's very sad to see that. Don't know too much about what the gun is here. This is Vex holding it. So maybe it's fun. Don't know. But yeah, it would have been nice to see a bit more of a unique style. We got this hologram in the background over this large structure. I think this is one of the Daedalus characters. We have seen the structure from a different angle, and I think this guy we saw in a clip as well, so this might be his crib. Nice to see another kind of building that may be a sort of focus, because we've seen a lot of the same buildings in repetition a lot of the time in trailers so far, so hopefully this is somewhere that's going to be of significance. Let's keep moving, so this video actually will end today. This is a Ripper area, and potentially another significant place. I really like the vibe of this one. This is very, very cool. We can see one of the Timekeeper towers in the left here. I've got some videos on the channel. I've got a video on the channel looking at every time we've seen a Timekeeper tower so far. It's just a short, just a bit of fun. Just the amount of times we see that those structures must be absolutely massive. But yeah, so we've got this Ripper place here that seems like it could be important. And we got these flags around here, so I don't know if this is a faction of the Rippers or tied to all the Rippers, but we've got this kind of flaming triangle, which I've talked about a number of times on the channel, which I think is tied to potentially a group of, like a rebel group or some resistance fighters, an offshoot of the Rippers perhaps, that is somehow influenced by the events that have transpired between Borderlands 3 and now, when Lilith has showed up here, and I think Lilith has become sort of a freedom fighting voice, an influence in the world. Whatever her story is, I think these guys have sort of picked up with that, with a bit of a Firehawky kind of vibe to that. We've seen that in Muriel's and a few other places in the gameplay footage so far. And you've got some more of the flags down there. And then we've got this gun that's being held, again by Vex, I think it was. And this is one of the new Ripper class guns. I like the look of these. I really like the influence of the sort of style they've gone for on these. What I don't like is that the Ripper guns, I believe, are all meant to be fully automatic guns. And they've sort of done that with the new gun classes, and they've put a real emphasis on the specific ways that each of the gun manufacturers works. I guess maybe that's going to get mixed up by the fact that you can get this component swapping in the game now. So it's not going to necessarily be fully rigid, but the understanding is that these guns are all meant to be fully automatic, which I'm not necessarily so keen on, like all of the guns in one manufacturer only really working one way. That feels, I don't know, I'd like the variety in each of the different gun types, because there's other characteristics of them that's important, but we'll see how that plays out. But the emphasis of them being like one specific thing just feels a bit narrow, you know. I don't know if I made any sense with that, but anyway, they look cool. And then we got another Timekeeper tower on the right there, and this is showing off, I guess this is an evening shot. Nice to see this lighting change, and I think that's really what this was meant to do, this shot. They've talked about a full day-night cycle and different forms of ambient weather that will happen. And I hope that that's all nice and organic and not too forced as per like what you're doing any given moment. And I really hope that that sort of leans into quite extremes a bit more than we've seen in Borderlands games before. It'd be really nice to have some very, very heavy atmospheric changes that can make the dynamics of whatever you're doing varied at the time. But either way, it's good that we're getting a bit of a look at that. It's nice to see the sort of mood change there, and it's obviously going to be a very pretty world that they've put together. We've seen a number of shots where, despite the chaos and everything else that be going on, we have seen some nice moments. And here's one of those nice moments with a bandit getting shocked, and you've got some of these sort of more rundown industrial feeling buildings around here, and some machinery. I don't think there's too much else to point out on that particular shot. Bit of money flying out of him. A little chest on the side on this one, and a usage of the corrosive barrel here to dispatch some of these Timekeeper troops. I think this was, I can't remember, I think we did see one of these units in the gameplay, and I'm not sure if that was just like a spawn-in kind of thing, one of the spawn-in kind of devices. So that's somewhere that bad guys are going to be getting spat out of constantly while you're in this zone. Nothing else much there, I don't think. I guess worth noting, I'm not sure if I've pointed out before, but the Daedalus, I guess they're not Daedalus, they're called the Order, these enemies, but they don't have like a blood, they have like a yellow fluid that comes out of them, and I think that gold and sort of yellow fluid I think is going to be tied into the story in terms of technology or power. And if you know anything about the Greek mythology of Daedalus, then you might sort of understand that a bit. Daedalus being a very, very renowned inventor, being his kind of key sort of point, I think. This is almost an identical shot to one we saw in, I think it was the first reveal of gameplay, but I'm almost positive when we saw that clip it was Raph that was jumping up here, although I think it was the same Jacob shotgun, but doing this same maneuver, jumping up the top here. In that original clip you actually got to see a floating barrel on the side of the screen, showing that the asset wasn't quite placed in the geometry correctly, which was very reassuring. But a little hop up here with the new grapple ability and some boom. And then we've got jumping over to Raph, and he's got one of his abilities active with this kind of hand cannon thing he pulls out, and that's going to fire out a nice bit of blue lasery death. And we can see that he's able to dual wield here, I guess with whatever his equipped weapon is at the time. So that's a bit of Salvador style throwback, maybe with gameplay there, that we'll get to enjoy. I guess this might be part of maybe a side quest, but the whole vibe I get around this, with this sort of Triceratopsy kind of bit of wildlife in front of us, is that the creature itself has this purple component that's sort of overlaid on it, but it appears that that's not part of the animal. That's actually something that's, I guess, maybe affecting it or trying to control it, because as the ordnance is pulled here, we can see that it actually sort of shoots that purple component and breaks it off. So maybe we'll have some sort of side quest or something we're doing in the story where we're having to go around and help free some animals from some mind control that someone's doing to them or something like that. And then maybe we won't actually kill that animal. Maybe we'll just free him and then let him live. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Of course, he might have tasty loot inside him. We have a conundrum. Just an aside, as we're going through this, you can see that Randy is wearing this very, very exuberant gold vest. And I think that is tied to the comment I made earlier about gold being a big component of this. Whatever this gold liquid is, I think is, going to be some of the secret sauce. And I'm still not entirely unsure that maybe we'll get a burn type related to that, which is basically what we see the Order using all the time, where they're firing out the kind of golden triangles. Zipping on a bit too much there, sorry. So this is in one of the fallen areas, maybe sort of towards the tropical area. We've got another, I guess this is an assault rifle, or maybe a sort of a DMR kind of gun being fired out here that appears to, once accumulating a few shots, then has a shock effect on the bandits. And this, I think, is in one of the cage cities, and this one they've all dug in here, and they're trying to strip the place for resources or whatever. This city is overrun with a sort of virus, or the sort of fungally, sort of almost like mutated plant life that we've seen in some of the footage so far. New material, Ordinite on the side here. Not very keen on the idea of Ordinite being red, although we've not properly heard what Ordinite is, but it's sort of meant to be an equivalent of an iridium, so it's going to have some sort of function in terms of a specific currency for something specific in the game, and a bit of money next to that as well. Got some rocket shots going out here to blap that fool. And this must be Harlow with one of her abilities going on, and I think this is representative of Rainbow Burn, which we have seen a couple of times, and I think we see a better shot with a shotgun in just a short while. So I don't think anything's really been said on that yet, but I think, yeah, some guns will have a Rainbow Burn, whether that's all elements in one or it's going to be something different. I did wonder whether maybe it won't actually even be called a Rainbow Burn either, whether maybe it will have a rainbow effect to it, but I did think from a few things I'd seen, I did wonder if maybe they were going to call it something like gravity. So maybe that's going to be just a new element with a bit of a crossover look, or maybe not. But yeah, Harlow dispatching those, which I think the ability there is similar to one we've seen before, where I think if she's however many people she orbs, she only has to damage one and it will affect each of the others. Much the same as sort of Hunter bow in Destiny as well. And just going back to that, just point out to you, Timekeeper Tower in the background there as well. And this is back in the rundown cage city, the overrun one, and this is some of that mutated plant life I was talking about. And as we turn around here, despite the word bum that we have written there, how crass, I think we get our first really good look at underneath of one of the cages in the cage city. And also, I don't know if this is actually the central column or the base of the central column, but we see this large power source here. So that's very good kind of look at that. And we can get to see underneath the cage a lot more here. And we see as we're working up towards that as well on another clip, as he was taking out some of the wildlife there. Order unit using this golden triangle attack here. This game loves triangles. Triangles are a big deal. Gold and triangles, that's pretty much the main things you need to know into that. Definitely more into the gold and the triangles than the ordnance and the gliding, but every time we see the gliding it looks as boring as I imagine. There's a bit of cool graffiti there. Boom! Very thin profile on that gun. It looks like it might be a bit different. I like the skin on this shotgun. Nice variety on the sort of colorways. I do hope that ends up being just a general pickup in the game. Something that Borderlands has done very well up to this point is not getting into proper season passes or too much kind of downloadable skins and all that kind of stuff. So I do hope that these are going to be just shaders you can find in the world. If not, if this is just a base shader for this gun, then yeah, nice. I like that as well. Sort of floating unit up here that I don't think we've seen too much of yet, but I assume is to do with the Order. It's actually a unit against us. However, I feel like, oh yeah, I think that's the Ricochet. So I think I kept thinking this was him getting shot as well, and I wasn't sure if this was maybe part of Exo's kit, and maybe this is a little droid of his. I think that shot is going to him, which we have seen somewhere else as well. I think I passed that over. I think that maybe was in one of the shots we saw earlier, where someone was in the rundown city near the drills. There's definitely one of those clips where you see a shotgun do a reflect, which must be part of an ability. But yeah, I think that's going off towards that unit. And that also, there's got a lot of different other lines coming in there. I'm not sure if there's even a conference call style effect going on with that shotgun there. Let's have another look. Is this another? Because that's, you see all the pellets go here and the deflect. Oh no, it was just weird kind of trick of the light. Very unique looking scope. That looks a bit different. And then you've got this pod at the back, very much like the bots used to land when Jack was firing them down in Borderlands 2. This is one of the spawn-in mechanics. I like seeing that just as the units here are dropping in. The more rurally area, some of the closest shots that we've seen of these kind of structures and areas in anything so far. Some more grenade action. Oh, and we've got a TD chuck out there. And that one's doing accelerated targeting and then an explosion upon contact. This is another one of those near the top of the cage city. So I don't know if that's just below that power source or whether this is a higher tier and it's above it. I'm not sure, but I think this must be something to do with the central columns. but this sort of area we haven't seen before, at least not at this sort of closeness as well. So I don't know if this is going to be sort of, you know, an area that's exclusive for Daedalus sort of locals rather than the kind of people that are trapped in the cities. Definitely feels like it's more of an executive kind of area. Nice big poster of the timekeeper there, and then one of the what are they called? Bulkhead style enemies here, which I don't think we've seen the actual like using of this kind of unit on this one's back. I don't think this is on all of them. I think there's a variety to the bulkheads, and I assume these guys blast out some sort of, I don't know, shockwavy kind of attack, or maybe this is like a mortary thing. I don't think we've seen it, but that's my suspicion. And he gets blapped there and drops out a bit of Ordinite. Again, all of the gold fluid, which I think is maybe going to be, because all of these, all the Order in that are automatons, so they're kind of robots or created beings, which all ties into the story of Daedalus. And I guess the timekeeper is going to be some big inventor guy who's, you know, created a technology that's running them. And I guess, you know, my suspicion is that this stuff is kind of what's, you know, the kind of the secret source behind everything. And when we saw the very large, bold Daedalus looking guy transforming into like a different form, like a gold kind of form, I assume it's going to be that kind of liquid, or that kind of element that is flowing through him to instigate that change. Some more boring gliding, some spamming, a bit more Ordinite dropping out there. One of the bigger, kind of more badass enemies in the background, and a bit of a usage here of one of the flaming barrels. A gadoosh. And I feel like there was something higher up on that scene before. What was it up at the top of the screen? Did we see something significant? Or was it nothing? Pretty much nothing. Just some cool graffiti up there. And you can see this really massive, like just about see this really massive drill, this corkscrew kind of drill here, where obviously there's some digging that's been done. My suspicion is still that there's going to be a fair amount of this game that may be underground, which, you know, is exciting to find out more about. I think they've stated that there's 4 main kind of zones, as it were, and I think we've only really seen, unless they're counting the cage cities as a separate zone, so the cities are one zone, I think we've seen the sort of the kind of more aridy, deserty kind of rocky areas, the snowy area, and then you've got the green area, which has a bit of a spectrum from the rural kind of farmland kind of areas that we've seen, all the way through to sort of the more tropical areas that we've seen. So I think that at the moment we've only really seen those 3, if we're not including the city. So I think the other one may be some sort of underground area, and I think we see one clip. I think we've seen one clip so far that may be attached to that area, although it may just be, you know, that there's underground areas spread all throughout. And I hope there's a nice variety to it all. Elpis in the sky, and some of the nice big bones that are poking up through the ground everywhere. Ripper symbol. Die, Rip. Bit more of the lighting change here. I guess this is more of a morning-y kind of morning light. Although the sun looked like it was going down there, so maybe it was an evening. Not sure what the story is going to be on these guys, but I like the whole kind of more of an extension of the kind of ratchy stuff they did in Borderlands 3. So you've actually got this kind of full-on, kind of very different kind of flavour to this kind of infected, kind of different kind of wildlife. And this guy, I don't know if this is just a generic or if this is going to be an NPC that we interact with, but I'm pretty sure we see a guy that's very close to this. Fighting in a gunfight just in another clip, so I don't know if this is a guy we're going to be following along with. One of the power station structures we've seen a number of in the background there. You can get a better look at it here. But yeah, we've seen these scattered around the game, so I don't know if those are going to be specifically tied to each of the cage cities, and maybe we're going to have to infiltrate those, or that's going to be like a sort of tick the box thing we'll be doing in the world, where we're taking down these kind of power stations to mess up the Timekeeper's plans. Bit of a twist on one of the heavier, kind of more artillery-looking units that we've seen so far, and some more boring, gross ordnance. Another look at the Vault Hunters. They keep changing this up in each of the shots we've seen of the Vault Hunters so far. A little bit of skin changes. I think they've realised, like, I mean, Vex gets the most coverage. I think it's very clear that Vex is the most interesting character out of all of them by far. And they haven't really sort of changed their skin too much here, but each of the others, this is a different skin than the first time that we've seen them, and they've shown a few of the other skins. These all generally still look pretty trash in my opinion, although Raph does look a bit cooler here with this mask on. They're aware that people don't like the style of these, so they've released a lot more images of different skins very early on, I think to try and appease that to some extent. It's very clear that these characters were not designed for this game, and at PAX they even said that Vex was designed to be a witch. Why would you be creating a witch for Borderlands 4? You wouldn't. You created it for Wonderlands, which has been my stance all along. This character was a sort of witchy necromancy sort of class, and yeah, like just spat that out of at PAX like it would make sense that they were making a character that was designed to be a witch in Borderlands. You just made a fantasy game. Why would you have made a fantasy game and not made a witch, and then you made a witch for Borderlands? That doesn't make any sense at all. Like, that has no place. If that is, like, that's even worse of a problem if they actually did try to design a witch-themed character for Borderlands, because it's so out of place. It doesn't make any sense. You should be making cool sci-fi stuff for your sci-fi game, and more like fantasy and more kind of outlandishy kind of stuff like that is in your Wonderland styles. Now I'm just going to start going off into another rant. We're gonna move on. We're gonna move on. But yeah, they've showed a lot of different skins of these to try and appease everyone, and so far 95% of all the skins they've shown are just absolute garbage, if not higher. I think every skin so far pretty much has looked trash. But yeah, I think Vex is kind of cool. And then they showed, I think one of her other skins looks pretty cool. And I think maybe one of Eamon's looked alright, maybe. So here we're seeing Vex, first time with her kind of undead wings out. Again, ties very much into Wonderlands. This looks like very much like Wonderlands. And then I think we see a bit more of her, one of her other abilities I don't think we've really seen so far, which I can't remember the name of. Apologies. But it basically makes things go underneath of the cage here in one of the cities again. And you've obviously got lots of Timekeeper paraphernalia everywhere. This is that ability. So this one, yeah, she sends out kind of a shockwave that's going to make things explode. And then I'm not sure if the knife thing is tied into that as well. So she seems to have an ability that's based on throwing small knives. She's got one where she can call up companions. Maybe that's the 3. Can't remember. Timekeeper tower in the background there, that you can't really see it that well, but the orange beam is the front of the tower. We see that in a number of places. In these sort of hazy sections where you see the beam sort of highlighting where it is. A bit more of a favela-y backwater sort of town here. Very, very spread out, sort of a bit more homegrown. So this is one of her, I think it's the Spectre ability, which she can have. She can have this Spectre that goes out and does attacking and pulls the aggro, I think. Or she has another version where they have guns and they're basically like working like turrets. We've got a bunch of Rippers running in here. So yeah, they obviously focused on her Spectre and allowed her to shoot me in the back. Bad choice, buddy. On the edge of the snowier area. Another one of the bulkheads here, and you can see that he doesn't have the same device on his back. And Raph with his heads-up display. and pulling one of his abilities here to pull out that hand cannon we looked at earlier. Just seeing that from another angle. So you can see the order unit here is glowing and has all the gold and the triangles coming off of him. So I think that there's going to be that kind of boosting ability, which I don't know if that's maybe how we'll interact with it, but same as the big character that turns into gold, I think these grunt units have a smaller version of that where they're sort of able to use it to empower themselves temporarily. So it's like a self kind of buff. Didn't work out for him. A bit more Ordinite. And this is this area here is the exact location that was the first bit of gameplay I think that we ever saw of anyone, and that was when Eamon jumps up from a lower platform using his grappling hook and jumped up and did the dual axes. I think that's the first clip of Borderlands 4 gameplay we ever saw. And that's this exact place, but we've got Raph here pulling his dual blades ability. Like the Ordinite stuff seems to drop all the time, whether that's just because they're really trying to highlight it or whether it's because it does drop that frequently, but I'm a little confused at the moment what that means for health, although I think health may now also be on a kind of cooldown sort of situation where you're going to be able to set up maybe buffs or healing, and you'll just pull that as and when you want it rather than being a pickup in the same way. I don't think I'm as keen on that, but maybe there's something cool they could do with that. I'm definitely a lot more open to that than some of the other changes we've discussed so far. Nice little back-to-back bit of team action here with Vex and Raph. So this is the second most common structure that we've seen in the trailers so far, this big mountain, converted mountain base, which fires out like a big pink laser. I'm not sure if that's going to be tied to this, but I'll give you a little warning. Spoilers, for anyone who doesn't want to listen to spoilers, turn off now or close your ears. So Nintendo put out an image, which you can find on my channel, where Elpis is completely blown to pieces. So I don't know if Elpis has fallen to pieces and has been pulled back and they're using a power to keep it held together. I don't know if this is needed to be a complete key. The same way that in Borderlands games we go and find pieces of a vault key. I don't know if that's sort of something where it's going to be part of the story where somehow the moon has to be held together to do something. I get the impression that the Timekeeper is needing Elpis as the vault key to open something in Kairos, and that's sort of tied into maybe why Elpis ended up here. But smashed to pieces may be no good to anyone, so I don't know if there's a power that's holding this together. This thing firing out pink and Elpis kind of being glowing with pink. I'm not sure if there's some connection there, but we've seen this completely taken apart, so we know that happens either early in the story or later in the story, one way or other. And not much else to point out there. I do like this sort of idea with the skybox, just the glass everywhere. That is something that's nice and unique to the game. Order unit here, pretty standard grunt. The red is quite common, the red and sort of silver is sort of standard for a lot of the order guns we've seen so far. Now, I don't know if this is just a trick of the eye. What do you see here? So, when the camera changes here and we have this very high up shot, I think this is just sort of to do with like a power source or something we're just seeing underneath with the mesh, but I see a hippo. Does anyone else see a hippo? I see a hippo here with eyes and the little ears and like the kind of big round snout. Is this like a weird hippo diner thing or something, or is it just a coincidence? Let me know what you think in the comments below, but I definitely see a hippo there with like a, I don't know, big ball on its head. There's a circus. Crazy space circus. One of the Meiji timekeeping units here, blasting out yet again. I still think this is going to maybe be something that's going to be more than it appears to be at the moment. Maybe we'll play into the game. This is the guy said might have been the guy that was warming his hands earlier. I don't know, this guy maybe looks a little bit bigger. I'm not sure if that's like just part of the animation his face is doing, whether this guy is going to be someone or not. Night shot here, just quite a different kind of lighting. The contrast with the sort of aura that's being created by the sort of change in the atmosphere on the far side of the broken shield there. This is some locked up people. So the Timekeeper controls people on the planet with these bolts, and when Lilith showed up, it kind of threw everything into chaos, and people managed to escape a lot of that. People ripped out their bolts. A lot of them became rippers, and people damaged themselves, and blah, 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 blah. So these guys are assumingly people that are in trouble for one reason or other, and you can see this sort of effect that's happening around them, where I assume maybe they're in some sort of trance, that the bolts are kind of keeping them sort of sedated or whatever. And this is actually where they're explaining about the system with the bolts, which are implanted into all the citizens of Kairos. A little unit down here that's he's sort of like a torso with arms, and then has a sort of contraption on his back, sort of jetsaw weaponry. We've seen those units wandering around a bit before. The white and gold here, the attire, very affluent. So this character here, I guess, is going to be part of the story in Borderlands 4, and this sort of signifies she's one of the Daedalus. So I think she's one of this higher class of citizens, I guess. Not sure how everything's going to go with that, but the white and gold is very common with some of the significant looking characters. Cutscene here with Vex watching this happen, so I guess this is going to be a scene that we're going to be involved in at some point. Not too keen on that. That's another big thing that's, you know, setting off alarm bells for the game, because I'm not a fan of lots of cutscenes. One of the good things about Borderlands is the fact that there isn't lots of cutscenes. You just get on with it, and I've always liked the sort of pick up a tape, or when you walk away from someone, it just keeps the audio going, so you can listen to what you're doing if you want, but you can still be getting on with playing the game, which is the most important part of it. Stopping for cutscenes is extremely frustrating, and it's one of the worst things about Destiny, because even when you come back into the game, often it throws you into a lengthy cutscene that you don't want to watch, and then it chucks you into a mission you don't necessarily want to be playing at that time, because you're maybe meeting up with a friend or something like that. It's really, really intrusive, and it slows down the game flow. And yeah, it's just not a positive thing in my opinion. This is the sort of thing that's going to have bloated their budget, which you know, is their own fault. But then they're trying to put that cost onto the customers, and you know, if you're a customer like me, you don't want it anyway. So it's a shame to see more and more of this creeping into Borderlands. I've always liked Borderlands for standing out as a different kind of game rather than just being like everything else. And to have some of that as options, you know, I much prefer if you have a scene where you're having story, or you know, something's being, like, exposition is coming to you through interaction with the character. So maybe you're moving around with the character and they're talking to you all the time, and you're doing an activity together, rather than having to stand there and just listen or sit and just watch a scene. That's just not good gameplay. It's a pulling in from things that are more casual, rather than allowing people to just get on and play the game. People are limited on time. Hopefully they don't do anything where you've got to force anything, so you've got to skip through it nice and easy, but then you're going to miss out on bits of story that maybe you did want to hear a bit of the story. It's not the main reason for playing Borderlands in my opinion. A bit of story is fine, but really, you know, it's about trying to just have a bit of escapism and play the game. If I want to watch something, I can turn on Netflix or whatever else. Not that I'm endorsing Netflix. So this shot here is from Elpis. So this is looking down onto Kairos. We've seen a few of these shots so far. So this is above the broken shield, looking down to the landscape of Kairos. And so at some point we're going to be going to Elpis and doing some missions and bits and pieces up here. So that's exciting. Thirst Scrap has very Ellie vibes. So I'm hoping that this is an indication that Ellie is going to be in the story and we're going to be interacting with her. Another quick rant on that. Moxie has been overused in this game to an insane amount. Not this game, to all of the Borderlands games. She's probably the most prominent character in all of the Borderlands games, and she is boring. It's fine having her around, but to keep having her in DLC and additional quests and having her as like a vendor, like, it's too much. And they've already talked about her being tied to the new system, which allows you to presumably there's going to be Moxie's bars, but then you're also going to have it tied into you don't have to save and quit to reload a boss or a mission or anything anymore. Like, there's some Moxie time thing that's going to, I guess, come into it, but it's like, have another character do it. Like, why do we need Moxie again? Moxie has already done so many different things in the game. Let's have someone else. Ellie is like an inventor. Ellie as an inventor would have been perfect for that role. Or, you know, Balix, or, you know, there's so many other characters that you could have used. You could have pulled Clay back in for something like that. It didn't need to be Moxie again. It's fine for her to be in the game, but guys, come on, like, you've got enough different characters in here. When we did the Handsome Jackpot DLC, there was no need to have Moxie doing that again. It would have been so much more like, she would have been better for the arms race. You could have had her doing the arms race because that's more the thing she came into. She had the Underdome. She was an entrepreneur that was doing that kind of event. Would have made much more sense. And Axton and Sal could have been a hilarious way to go with the story for Handsome Jackpot, because you could have had something where, like, I don't know, Axton's asking for your help because Sal's gone off on a bender into Handsome Jack's casino, and, you know, he's racking up all this debt and we've got to go and save him before he gets put in like space prison or something. You know, you could have had a really funny thing, and then maybe Axton accidentally gets pulled into it as well, and you could have had all sorts of fun and chaos with that, and having some replayability with some of the older characters and engaging with them in a new way, which, you know, would have been so much more interesting. To have Moxie again was just, it just made the whole thing boring, because it was just the same thing you've played a bunch of times. Just, yeah, just my opinion. But anyway, Ellie would have been perfect for that, so it's nice to see Ellie maybe back in the game. Very, very central shot of the Timekeeper's Towers here. One of the best kind of landscape shots I think we've seen of those so far. Over here in one of the sort of rippery, arid areas. You can see just how massive these things are. They're going to be crazy. It's going to be interesting to find out what actually is in those. I don't know if maybe they're going to be tied to sort of vaults. Maybe these towers are going to be over some of the vaults in some way, and then that's going to be our kind of entry sort of point. I've not actually noticed that before, I'm not sure entirely what I'm looking at up there. Oh, I think that's just Elpis, but I think because the haze, you can't quite see it, so I think this is to the sort of cracks through the middle of Elpis, and that's the outside with the shatter in the sky. And this is talking about how a cataclysmic event happened in the wake of Lilith's arrival. And you've got this big iridium shard here that's come down from the moon, and you can see those like all sort of breaking out on the surface of Elpis as well. But yeah, these came down, shattered the dome, caused all this chaos, and then completely mucked up the Timekeeper's kind of systems of control. This is the sort of more abandoned city. Some fighting there. So this bridge, I'm not sure for definite if it's this one, but I think this might be the bridge that we see Raph go across, and we've seen from the side, but this is a bird's eye view looking down on that bridge. So I don't know what that's saying about our, like, why would you have text going up? Is that saying there's going to be some sort of way that we're going to be moving around in the air at some point, so that we're going to see things down on the ground? Because from the floor you're not going to see that. So maybe that's an indication they're going to finally have some sort of flying back in the game. I don't know how I feel about that. Or maybe, I guess, maybe that's just part with the gliding. I guess maybe there's some parts where you're going to be sort of going over things from a high enough elevation that they've sort of put some elements on the ground to kind of just give a little bit more of a vibe. Let me know what you think. But yeah, that's like a bridge. I'll try and show that from a different angle. Here's a clip of some of the Kairossians fighting back, just taking out an order unit there. I was a little bit sad how he like, oh, with his little claw hand, he was like, oh, I'm dead. A bit of fighting here between some of the Colossians just fighting back against the Order as well. Just the sort of structures of change that have happened in the world. This is where they're talking about how some of the characters have, you know, mutated themselves and that sort of by ripping out these bolts to sort of free themselves, and it hasn't necessarily worked out for the better. Fun little animation with the exploding skull there, just batting it towards you rather than just the normal yeet. So that's kind of cool. Another nice panoramic shot. Sort of a lotusy flower kind of vibe down here. I'm not sure what that's signifying. Losing my voice. Very far in the different there, you can see these sort of tops of these kind of posts with sort of symbols and flags on. So I think that's tied to these sort of Tibetan-y bases that we have, which is part of the resistance as well, or one faction within the world. Gun with kind of floating-y components is a little bit different. I'm not sure. Not sure I'd know what class to put that in. You can see the little blade here on the gun as well, so if you didn't know that, we've seen definitely that on a few different guns, implying that the potential melee bonus is going to be returning on some of the weapons. Raph pulling his ability, and this is in the one of the areas where we've seen Rush, one of the big black dude we've seen in some of the clips so far, in that same location. So then this is back to one of the Daedalus characters, and yeah, I'm becoming more unsure about this character. I think maybe she's going to be a bit of a pretending to be our friend, but maybe not our friend kind of deal. And I even wonder whether maybe this is going to turn out to be the Timekeeper's daughter. But who knows? Either way, we've got some interesting symbolism going on there, with her drinking from a chalice and this kind of tree glowing in white light in the background. So I don't know if this is going to be something to do with the Daedalus trying to use this yellow liquid, this gold, and somehow have used it to obtain immortality, and maybe that's what's different about them from the rest of the Kairossians. They're this other class that the Timekeeper is a part of, that have all managed to somehow ascend from everyone else. And then maybe then having a bit of a struggle at the top. Maybe there's now been a way found out to kill them, or to sort of counteract the stuff. This is all just, you know, just spitballing, just some of my musings and thoughts about, you know, what may be happening with the story. More gross cutscene stuff, very Destiny feeling, which I, you know, really just don't have too much time for. I really hope they keep these short and sweet, or they just don't keep them too important. I've forgotten this chap's name, but he is a named character already, so this guy is important in the story, and I'm guessing that he is one of the Daedalus as well, but he's, you know, not too keen on a lot of the stuff that's going on, and so he's a part of the faction getting away from things. Here they make a point about returning characters and mention Moxie and Zane, but they fail to mention Amara, who to me is, you know, just as important as the rest of those. I like the change of look they've gone with Amara. Just a little update on her. It's a fun vibe, a little bit of difference. Moxie and Zane. Already have a very tiny little slice of my Moxie rant, so I'll leave that as it is for now. I like the sort of updated look on Zane as well. This is Rush. He looks like a fun new character, and he definitely looks like someone I would have been more interested to play rather than Eamon. I think that Rush, as a vibe, definitely has a more compelling and cohesive kind of look to him. And maybe he could have been some fun character that was kind of like a bit of a steamroller. I guess that would tie in with his name. You'd have, like, you know, maybe some stuff that's really leaning into being sort of a lot slower and more tanky, and maybe like, you know, giving him some abilities that really sort of make him sort of bunker down, but then maybe also having something where you can have him really being able to like charge around, and that could have been like a fun sort of almost like how when you play like Incredible Hulk games, you often have this, you know, this sort of momentum with him, and you can actually jump very far, but you kind of, you know, it's like run straight and jump, but it's not lots of different little movements. That might have been a fun different way to kind of just have some varied interaction. Claptrap here. Good to see Claptrap back, although they kind of really put it on a real kind of downer note by just having him say bummer for some reason that he's back, which is sort of, I don't know, I feel like the current team at Borderlands have a problem with Claptrap, and they're trying to kind of wean him out of the game a bit more. And that's been the case. I feel like, you know, they were sort of a bit negative around him in Borderlands 3 as well. But I hope that he's, you know, doing typical Claptrap things, albeit that he now has someone who's trying to usurp his position to an extent, which is this guy, which is Echo 4, which is our new Destiny Ghost rip-off character who is going to be like navigating us around and the like. I think this guy's just pretty quiet and just does more kind of emote style interactions with us, so maybe that'll be fine. But really, if we had a companion that's going to be going around and unlocking doors for us and, you know, helping us out and, you know, being our little sort of GPS, it should have been Claptrap. It should have been a type of Claptrap or something like that. Or Balix, who was a navigator. Like, to have Balix that was helping you get around in the game would have been a good laugh. I don't think they needed to bring in this kind of new cutesy character in this kind of way. And I think there's way too much going on with that as well. There's, you know, there's way too much on the screen in terms of the UI, UX. It's absolutely muddy and horrible. You've got this, you've now going to have characters leading you around. Plus this guy can put like a path for you to follow around. Plus you have a compass at the top of the screen, which has big, horrible icons on it. There's just so many things they're doing to just dumb this down and just making it just really just feel like there's so much intrusive going on. I hope that's not the case. We haven't seen like enough for me really to be making a lot of these judgments, but that's how it feels at the moment from the small amount we have seen. If you haven't spotted already, Timekeeper Tower in the background there. Let's just move on. Or not. There we go. See, yeah, he's punching away. I think it'd be a bit of fun, but I just feel like it's too much like other games. Like, you know, Borderlands has its way that it can be doing that stuff already. Like to have Claptrap to sort of cloak in and cloak out as and when we need him, like hack a door or anything else, would have been perfect. I mean, what's this guy that got the Claptrap doesn't? Come on, give Claptrap a break. So yeah, you can see there he's done like a bit of a scan over the terrain, and then we've now got this path that we're literally following through. I really hope, like, because I thought the idea with this game was they were going for this big open world vibe, and now we were going to have, you know, lots to explore and find. I really hope it doesn't end up being like Destiny, where there's just icons on everything all the time, or if you wait 5 seconds, something starts, you know, telling you to go over here. Like, you need to just leave us to it. Just give us the world and give us some tools. Tools, not rules. It's so much better. But, so yeah, you can just pull up this to follow you through. Sometimes that's fine. You know, I mean, sometimes things are a bit too complex, or in certain missions to have, you know, stuff so it's just a little bit easier now and again to have variety is fine. But if you're just, you know, just being dragged to and from by other things, it almost ends up being pointless you being there. Like, so why don't you do it? You're here. I'm trying my hardest not to rant, I swear. Like, this is tiny little rants, tiny little amounts. And then now it starts to get into the actual gameplay bit, but I'm going to jump past that because I'm not going to address that today. I will drop in right here, because this is just when they're talking about the new weapon system, which they described wrong, but I can clean that up when we get to it. But the clip I wanted to look at here before I jump to the next little few shots is when I said about the underground area. I think this is the only time we've seen this type of location, and it does look compelling. maybe the boss with lots of hands maybe is meant to be in the same sort of place as well, but it's kind of it's a different kind of architecture style with sort of this sort of stalactite, stalagmite sort of stuff, but it's sort of almost, you know, it's almost like bordering on kind of structural architecture kind of merged in, as if it's kind of emerging almost from it, or, you know, it's been sort of broken back down. I don't know, but it looks a bit different, this area, and I'm very interested to know more about it, but this might be our fourth zone or part of it. This is talking about some of the systems now with the guns, where different manufacturers will have crossover, which isn't totally new, but you'll have crossover, so some things that you wouldn't normally have in the manufacturers will apply to a gun and give you more variety. So I think that's only a positive thing. Whether it's enough in the weapon systems, I'm not convinced. I think there needs to be more than that, but I think you have the rainbow burn. I think we're maybe going to have something with the sort of Daedalus kind of burn, and I think there might be even more to that. I think, you know, there needs to be, to have the sort of variety that is going to sustain this game. But either way, it's going to be better than the loot system in Borderlands 3, because dang, that was bad. In the background here, there was one earlier I didn't point out, but again, that mountain there with the big cored out structure in it that fires the pink light. You see this thing from lots of different angles. I like this Borderlands tradition of having good kind of landmarks that you can see from lots of different angles and sort of see and feel how the world's connecting, and that really in itself should be enough to orientate you. If you've got this compass now, because a lot of people are making a fuss about the mini-map not being there, but I'm not really too fussed about that. The compass is fine. Really, you need a compass with north and south to orientate yourself, landmarks around, and that's it. Unless there's something really specific. Like, I don't want icons all over the thing, because it's muddy and intrusive. You don't need it. Like, you just need to roughly know, was I over here just now? Like, I mean, you've got a map you can open at a button press. It's not a big deal just to check that, but for a game where exploration is meant to be key, you just don't need too many of these components. Nice up close look here at one of the cage cities, one of the closest that we've been to the walls. You can see how massive these are, and these have the buildings and societies inside with the cage over the top, and then timekeeper towers coming up from the middle. And we don't know how many there are of these yet. I would say that I think we've seen 3 or 4 of these things. From different angles, but some of them have been sort of lower in valleys and higher up, so I don't know, maybe I haven't quite got my head around how we're sort of looking at these yet, but the positioning on the landscape to me makes me feel like we've seen you know, more than one, but I don't know how many. But yeah, good close look at one of those. Kind of is this meant to be a shotgun? I guess. Pretty sort of feels like an SMG with a very, very solid state. Yeah, SMG, but with a very kind of solid kind of like a kind of squarey kind of animation on the effect on the shooting there on this one. I hadn't noticed that before. And then obviously the wall going back out. That's interesting. I'm not sure what that circular bit is over there. Could be another interesting structure. And he did a good job with a good little gun. And I think this is about to jump back to gameplay and then talking about menu stuff. Oh, that's okay, that doesn't go too long, let's just jump forward. Yeah, so this is still more of the types of clips we're looking for. And this is in, I think, one of the snowy areas. One of the big mountain bases, one of the order bases. We've seen quite a lot of these, and then we've got these cells with people, I guess, locked behind these. Wowzers. Not sure how I feel about this, you know, crazy over the top stuff falling apart. Like in Borderlands games traditionally, that's happened if you've done like a big amount of damage over the top. So it sort of indicates how powerful your weapons are being at the time. I don't know if they're just making it so that everyone just falls to pieces every time you kill them now, because that's pretty boring and odd. I definitely preferred the Borderlands previous version of that, where it was an indication of how much sort of power you're doing. Whether they're just showing that off, I don't know. Pretty unique gun there, with the dual clips on each side. Which one is that? I guess that's part of the... No, can't think. I think the dual mag thing being like that, I think is an indication of it being one of these crossover guns, but I'm not entirely sure on that. I was originally thinking it was the Bandit class of guns coming back. Maybe it's an indication of the COV, which was actually an extension of the Bandit class, because you've now got... Let me see if I can remember this correctly. You've got Jacobs, Vladov, Tedior, Maliwan, Torg. Doesn't feel like enough. And then, maybe it's those 5. Then the 3 new ones, you've got the Order, Ripper, and Daedalus. So that's 8. Maybe that is right. 8 base weapon proper manufacturers. But then you have, which I didn't mention properly on here, was you then have 3 parts only manufacturers, which is Atlas, COV, and Hyperion. So you can get components of those on your guns as well. So I think that's right. I think that maybe is everything. But yeah, so you'll get some that have a very, very unique look as part of that, because yeah, you get these other components thrown into the mix that will be out of place for that manufacturer normally. And that's where they're talking about that a little bit more. And they've said that they've pulled back the loot system quite a lot, so they've tried to get the rarities right, so legendaries will actually feel like legendaries this time around. They still haven't explained enough about the weapon system to really know what that's going to mean. I think that really the whole weapon structure at this point is a bit outdated. They needed to really rethink the whole thing, because it needs to be a lot more horizontal kind of searching and progression, with sort of spikes for different kinds of, or rather peaks of different kinds of variation on weapons. And that's not a very good explanation, but I guess I'm just ranting a lot, sorry. So you would have, say, I don't know, blues. A lot of the time you're not going to be looking for blues in a lot of games, but if you have a blue with a red text, then there's something special about it. So to have blues with a yellow text, have purples with a yellow text, have guns within the different rarities that, in a certain circumstance, if there's something about it that is an extra multiplier, you could end up with a green gun that could be, excuse me, because of the components, could be very powerful. It's a little less intuitive, and that's a very crude way of trying to explain it, but basically you want it so that you want to look at all loot. All loot should have some viability to be good, but the colours are kind of a base rule, so it would be unusual to find something like that, but you want to have anything being viable, because if you're only looking for legendaries all the time, then that's where Borderlands 3 happens. You end up with pockets full of legendaries before you've even got out of like the first planet, and you know, it's completely meaningless, because they can be, you know, absolutely terrible, or they could be fantastic, and that's basically all you're picking up and all you're using. Like, oh, sorry, I'm a bit tired as well, so this is all getting very very ranty. I'm not sticking to task. I'm going to try and focus on this a bit more. This is one of the Timekeeper's cities, and I guess this is still the one that's run down with the drills on the outside. Psycho, they're just running up with new explosion animation. A bit more of the rurally area. Pretty fun looking kind of mini Gatling gun here as well. Blasto! Yeah, so I guess that guy died without getting completely obliterated into pieces. But he did set on fire, so I guess maybe there's just sort of different components, different animations to end with the different characters versus the elements as well. Here is a very significant shot because this is one I mentioned earlier, where this is one of the only shots we've seen properly of the rainbow burn. So the rainbow ammo type or element type. So this shotgun is actually firing out this mixed thing, whether it will be called something else or whether it will be at random. That was shooting the corrosive barrel, obviously, but if you look at the pool after this shot as well, you can see we get this rainbow effect. So there's something in that, whether it is as simple as a new rainbow burn, or if it is going to be just a new burn that has a rainbow effect, or whether that's just an indication that a gun maybe has multiple element types that are happening at once. So if you get a gun that's maybe doing corrosive, almost it's solar, corrosive and fire at the same time, maybe it by default then just gets that look, so that you know that it's like a mixed element gun. Bulkhead here spitting out some triangular death. I really like this more tropically area. I think I'm going to have a lot of fun around here. I really hope you can get some nice Hawaiian shirts in this game. Definitely could do with a nice holiday. And this is a gun firing out yet again. Something that is doing a sort of rainbow burn. We get a couple of clips of this just in succession, I think. Here we've got one of the legendaries on the floor. And another backup for the rainbow burn is that in the first look trailer, I think it was, we saw a loot explosion, a shower of loot. And if you remember, we saw a number of legendaries there that had a rainbow glow coming off of them. So I think that that is the indication that those guns have that effect. And you can see clearly here that this one does not. So it's not a general effect that the legendaries have. It is a different effect. And yeah, just admiring his loot there. What do I pick up? Another one here. I'm not sure if the helix is just a general part of that now as well, or whether that is also some indication of some additional element. We've seen this kind of effect used in Wonderlands. There's 4 different rarities of like extra loot. So you've got your normal legendaries, but then you can get chaotic, volatile, primordial and ascended versions of any gear in the game, and they each have a different kind of extra effect to their loot beam. And so I'm not sure if that helix is indicating that there's some extra component. Timekeeper tower in the background, and then that, I think it's the same gun we saw in that previous clip just now, but again showing off the rainbow shots here. And then you've got some little kind of elephanty kind of walrusy creatures in the lake there. And then I think that's pretty much winding down. Oh no, I think maybe we've got another burst after the rest. We've got just the rest of that gameplay bit, which I will do separately. I think we've just got a few more little clips just at the end. And I do apologise, as long as it is, I apologise it's been ranty, but I sort of just want to share my thoughts as they are. I have no reason to, you know, be manipulative with my opinions. I just give my opinions as they are, with you know, decades of you know, obsessive gameplay in many cases, lots of different games that I've played over the years, and I have a passion for gaming, and Borderlands is one of those top passions. So I'm very very into what's going on with this, but at the same time, you know, people do the wrong stuff with the game, or the company's going the wrong direction. You know, I'm not gonna be too worried about just dusting off my feet and going to something else. These days, you vote with your money. You put your money towards the people you think are doing the right things in the industry. So if they're doing the wrong thing, then guess what? You don't give them the money. But yeah, we just got this little last blast here of a few clips. I like this. We've got this dual counter here, and this is something that's you've got your sort of reticle here, and I guess this is your normal ammo. I don't know if this is a secondary ammo, because it actually looks like it sort of has a shield icon, so I don't know if maybe this is going to be a gun where maybe you could be firing out you know, ammunition, or maybe you could have ammo for health to be shooting teammates as well. Definitely a possibility. And I don't know if that is an addition, a change on the ordnance, so maybe there'll be something interesting about the ordnance that means that it isn't going to just be really, really boring. I don't know if we've seen one of these guys. This is a lot more heavy version of one of the Order, so it's one of the grunts, but he's got a very, very layered kind of metallic outfit on. Maybe that's sort of a specific class that he is, or maybe to do with a specific location. We've seen this place from a number of different angles, just the rocky area. This is quite an interesting contraption in front of us that looks a little bit out of place, so I'm not sure if that's going to be part of some story, side story, or focus or something. Big elephanty with the vehicle on its back. We've seen that in the most recent gameplay trailer as well, as Eamon does a big ground slam with one of his abilities there, and again, notably he has a different haircut than I think we've seen him rocking before. Just a pretty sort of basic sort of faux hawk. And then I think that is it. Now we just have a last little blast. Timekeeper tower in the background there, and we saw a rainbow burn effect weapon to our right. This sort of pickup explosive that you can find in the world and chuck out now. Nice wide shot. Nice lot of enemies here. We did see this before, and I think I counted sort of 20-ish enemies on the screen at once, so I hope that that's not uncommon. Another big structure in the background there we don't get a good look at, but that looks like it could be something significant. And then this guy here, so this I think is a roaming boss. So they've talked about there being events that can kick off similar to public events in Destiny. Destiny has not really done a very good job at dealing with those in the past, although there has been a few points where it's been in a better position. I think they are maybe in a little bit of a better position now, but I hope it's more organic and random than that. But I think that's what this guy is, based on some things that they've said at PAX. So I think this is just one of those sort of random occurrences that might happen. Some more ordnance in effect there as we get this big character jump to us and break free, which is their whole big tag. And then we have another look at their really, really horrendous artwork. No, we're not even going to look at it. Yes, we are. All right, fine. Well, we can add one more little rant. I really like this more kind of retro Borderlands 4 logo they've seemed to have settled on now after 4 iterations or so that we've seen up to this point. And then, yeah, we get this really kind of pants box art that they've gone with that just looks like it was done by AI. Very, very terrible artwork. They really need to rethink that. It's just, yeah, so bad. It's out of the theme they've done. Once again, it feels like they're trying to distance themselves from a lot of stuff to do with the previous Borderlands games. Other than they've pulled back the red from Borderlands 1. I guess that's the thing they're trying to go for here, but the image itself is very, very boring, very, very basic, and to me, that's not going to inspire anyone to pick this title up. The variety of cool artwork they could have done, and the variety of themes they have in the stuff we've already seen could have made for very, very good alternatives, but they definitely should have just stuck with the theme and had the Psycho shooting the finger guns on himself and had 2 robotic hands. It's simple stuff, people. But yeah, that's it. It's been a bit of a crazy video. I apologize. It's probably a bit different than normal. Probably a lot more negative than normal. I do try to be positive with these, but at the same time, it is what it is. We've still got the gameplay itself to have a look at, and a lot of moaning about the terrible UI and the UX experience in the game. Then we've got some pack stuff to talk around. There's other videos coming out. I'm going to try and get to them as soon as I can. So if you did enjoy this for any reason, please do like and subscribe. Help me out so I can keep making these videos. I've got Lord of the Rings video dropping soon, one of my Easter egg videos, so also subscribe if you're interested in seeing that. But thank you very much. Please do drop a comment. Let me know what you think about all the stuff I've talked about here. And I will catch you next time, Vault Hunters. Take it easy, have a great day. Peace out.